I was bullied.
Right.
Period. There is not a day that went by in 12 years of schooling that I was not bullied.
Yep.
So for me, I don't know what it's like to go through school and have a good experience.
Yep.
So when people say, well, I love school, it's like, I hated school.
Yeah.
I liked the learning aspect.
Very much the same.
I hated the social aspect.
Yeah. Yep.
I hated it. Because it was like, I had my little pocket of friends.
Sure.
And when I was with them in whatever class or whatever moment or whatever club or whatever thing, that was fine.
Yeah.
But those were very limited. Because, class is what? An hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Once that was done, I was having a great time when I was doing theater.
Yeah.
Because, one, I got to be somebody different.
Sure.
And two, I was with a bunch of other weirdos who like to do drama. Yeah. So we weren't going to make fun of each other. Well, we were, but in the way that I still make fun of my friends and the people I love. Because I don't know how to be a normal person. So if I don't like you, I'm polite. And if I love you, I talk shit to you.
Right.
So I realize that's probably the wrong whatever.
I also think that there's like a very different experience for people who are bullied for having braces or wearing glasses or, you know what I mean? Like little white kids who get bullied for having acne or wearing glasses. It's very different to be bullied for that than to be bullied for being queer or bullied for being a person of color, you know what I mean? Or indigenous or disabled. Those are very different experiences. And one of them is like you are already, again, punching down on the marginalization and, the disenfranchisement of people. You know what I mean? If you're a little white kid who's getting bullied because you are skinny, cry me a fucking river. Do you know what I mean? Because you're prematurely balding, again, sorry. You know what I mean? Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, did you go through anything real, though? You know what I mean? Are you experiencing any, like, real sort of... That's what intersectionality is. Like, are you experiencing anything that's, like, real structural issues?
So, this is where I see the hate mail finally pouring in for you.
Good.
Because bald is real.
I know, I just love that is the most triggering thing to white men, is, like, if they're balding, their hairline is buffering, bitch. Like, they act like... What'd you say to me? I'm gonna kill your whole family. Like, bitch, it's not my fault you're bald.
No, that has nothing to do with me.
No.
Sorry about it.
And you already know. Also, who cares?
Well, I think that's the bigger thing. Who cares?
Right.
I don't care that you're bald. I don't care. I don't care.
The fact that you care makes me... Ooh, honey.
I don't care.
I love that.
What I do care about is that we've talked long enough that we need to take a break.
Wow.
I know. It's true, though. We're going to take a break now.
Bye.
And we're back.
Yep.
So our topic today
is death. Death. The dying.
blood.
The living dead.
What's so funny,
Zombies.
and I know that I've told you
Murder.
this, is recently, for some reason, every time I say death, I sign it. Or if I say dead, I don't know why.
Yeah.
It just started in the last year. I'm just dead.
I do it too, very often. I do it at work a lot to people. We're like, what is that? Don't worry about it.
And the kind of funny thing about that is that my child has now, my daughter, has started, like, she's like, how do you do that with your hands to make the sign for death? Well, you're going to be talking about death in school.
This little girl walked around being all dead.
You are dead to me.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
One of the interesting things, because death to me is a fascinating topic. And it's one of those topics that most people don't want to talk about because it does make you face your own mortality.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that.
Ew.
I had a little mortality facing the other day. My son is sitting in my lap, and just in case you wonder, I'm not going to mention my children by name most of the time because I don't want to. But he is 11, and he's sitting on my lap, and I'm old. He's sitting on my lap. We're reading, and he says to me, "I hope that you're still around when I'm 55."
Jesus
and I
Christ.
said, "Pumpkin." I would be 105, so that's probably not going to happen. And then, to be fair, I did the math, I'd be 104.
Oh, okay.
But, anyway, I was like, oh, baby. Most likely that's not going to happen. Nobody in my family lives to be that old. But I was like, I don't know. And I don't particularly want to live to be 105.
No. Girl.
And he goes, well, but... And I said, baby, I'm already old.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 60 this year.
Yeah.
And so I didn't start having children until I was already 46. Kinley, I said her name anyway.
Oh,
she was
my
born when I
God.
was 46.
Beep.
He was born right when I was 48. So I'm already
167.
You know, right.
I know.
Or as my good friend Naomi Judd would say, I'm entering the last third of my life.
Okay, yeah.
So, by the way, she has ruined everything for me because once she talked about retiring and she was like, I'm in the final third of my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's time that I just do fun things and not work anymore. And I was like, wait, what? And she was like, 1 to 30, 30 to 60, and 60 to death, whenever that is. And I was like, oh my God.
Ew.
No. And so ever since then, I'm like, I was kind of like that cartoon character with my feet digging into the ground as I'm approaching 60. I'm like, I don't want to go to my last third. But
So funny.
it is what it is. But death in itself, by the way, the conversation made him very sad.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so we had to stop having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But death has never been one of those topics that to me has been upsetting or shocking or off limits, because for so many people in white culture, it is off limits. It's a topic we don't even talk about because it upsets people. And you know how white people hate to be upset.
Yep.
They don't
I sure
want anything
know.
that makes them uncomfortable.
Bitches start wars over it.
Yes.
I'm mad.
Right.
Boom.
And so I have to kill you and all your family.
Yeah.
What's interesting, though, is it wasn't really one of those off-limit subjects until Queen Victoria.
Okay.
And it all changed.
Yeah.
I mean, she was in mourning for her husband for, I don't know, 100 years.
Right.
Her husband died when she was relatively young. And then she was in mourning for the rest of her life. And so it became a taboo subject. We don't talk about death.
Yeah.
Other than we also don't talk about Bruno, but that's a whole other thing. But we don't talk about death. And so that has really traveled with white culture, is that people are very uncomfortable with the topic of death.
Okay.
And I know for me personally, didn't think much about it, but I also didn't lose anybody until I became a young adult. And AIDS. AIDS kicked in, and then like everybody I knew died.
Yep.
And I was going to funerals every weekend and whatever. And so all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is awful. Yeah. But it isn't as scary as I think I thought it would be.
Yeah. Yep.
Because there is so much that's like, oh, that's the end of this chapter.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know specifically what you think, but I know for me what I've thought is, because, if you've listened to our pod at all, you know that we did a whole thing about ghosts and whatever. So we obviously believe in spirits. We obviously believe there's an afterlife of some sort.
Yep.
But I have that kind of belief that because we start as energy, we go back to energy.
Well, I mean, that's 100% my belief. It's one of the laws in science of thermodynamics, where, energy can't be created or destroyed. Energy is just transferred. And so, a lot of my belief in general about death is energy. I used to really believe in, we're here for a purpose. We don't know what it is. When we die, when we're done with our purpose, we die, right? Or if you die prior to your purpose being fulfilled, then you come back. So it's reincarnation until you do what you got to do. And that was the only way I was able to justify as much death as I saw as a young person, because a lot of people died when I was young. I had experienced a lot of death before I was 18, I'd been to double that many funerals by the time I was 18. So I had to reconcile it, right? Because I'm not religious, because I don't believe in God or any Abrahamic religion, and I'm not...
More hate mail right now.
That
was your hate mail alert. Anyway, go
Girl,
ahead.
I talk about burning down churches, okay? So I'm not
true.
afraid.
That is true, you do.
So I don't believe in that. My spirituality is my own belief, you know what I mean? It's not anything that's set in a doctrine. But I really had to reconcile and understand why people were dying. And why people were dying of what they died from, and from a young age. In high school, the summer going into my junior year, I had 8 people die in 6 months. So from August
I remember that.
to January, it was overwhelming. And again, I was an overachiever, so I studied. My life was devolving, kind of. And I was breaking down as a human. But again, this wasn't the first time I'd experienced death. On my biological mother's side of the family, when I was younger, quite a few people died back to back, 6 months apart, you know, so I was young experiencing that. And death in all kinds of ways. I mean, growing up in the country,
sure,
you see death everywhere. And biological father and my uncle and my whole family really into hunting. So seeing dead things was like, it was very upsetting. I'm a highly sensitive person, right? But I rapidly became pretty desensitized to death, right? Because I'd felt too much. I had witnessed too much, and it was just really, really challenging. But again, I then felt kind of like death touched. I know it sounds crazy, but like the opposite of God touched. I felt very connected to it. I felt like death wasn't something that was scary. It was the only thing that you were ever going to actually do in life, right? Like the only universal thing that people experience is death.
Yeah.
I mean, breathing. For the
Sure.
most part.
But of monumental,
Yeah,
you know,
death.
it's death.
And I
think one of the things for me, I was also realizing that death for the dead is nothing.
Yeah.
Where it's really it affects the living.
Death is the problem for the living.
Yeah,
Yep.
death doesn't, and that's the perfect yes.
Yeah.
Death is a problem for the living. It's not a problem for the dead.
No.
They're dead.
Mm-hmm.
They are no longer in this shit
Okay.
show that we call life.
Exactly.
And they're no longer suffering if they were suffering, you know,
Right,
if they were
exactly.
ill. And I did misspeak. I forgot that I had a couple friends die when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
None that I were close to, though. I mean, one that I'd grown up with, and he died in a car accident.
Yeah.
And that was the first funeral I went to. I was 16, and it was an open casket.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know enough, because I didn't know any funeral etiquette, had never been to one, and nobody told me, you know, anything about it. Didn't know you had to be told anything about it.
Right.
But it was an open casket, and when they were like, now we're going to allow, as you exit, to walk past the casket and out and whatever, and everybody was doing it, I was like, oh, I guess this is what you do. And because it is such a ritualistic thing, I was like, well, I'm going to do what everybody else is doing because I don't want to be the person who's doing it wrong or is being disrespectful or whatever. And so I walked by the casket and I was like, who the fuck is that in the casket? Because he looked so different that I was like, who dat?
Yeah.
And I know it wasn't for me, it wasn't until my grandmother died, which was I was 30, that I really felt that whole, you know, your body is just the vehicle which with you go through life. I never felt it so much until that moment, because when she was sick in her, you know, in her deathbed, not to be over dramatic, that's what it was. I would come visit her. I could still feel her, you know, her, whatever. The moment she died, that was no longer her.
Yeah.
That was an empty shell.
Weird, right?
And her energy left her house so quickly that I was like, it made me realize, and I realize I'm kind of jumbling a bunch of things together, but you know how sometimes you want to go back to a house that you maybe lived in just to see what it was like. And then you do, if you've ever done it, and it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel... It's because whatever made it your home was the energy that you put into it.
Yeah.
And so that's how I felt about my grandmother's life and her body, but also her home was like, oh, this is just a house.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like anything special.
Right.
I mean, the memories attached to it, yes,
Sure.
but the whole feeling of it was completely changed. And that was when it really kind of clicked in my head. It was like, oh, her energy that's always been here, that I've always known to be here, is gone.
Yeah.
And so this is now just a house.
Yep.
Yeah,
Weird,
so that
right?
was kind of weird for me.
Super weird.
And I've gone back to houses that I've lived in.
Yeah.
In fact, my first boyfriend lived in a house that we had lived in for several years. And that's actually how I met him, because he was like, I understand you used to live in my house and blah, blah, blah. You know, small school, whatever.
Sure.
But going back there was like,
I hate it here.
I hate it. Well, I was still in Carleton, so I did hate it there.
Yeah, I grew up in
you
the
know,
place.
but yeah, that to me was interesting. You know, I also, you talked about briefly that you have a purpose, and until you fulfill your purpose, that you will keep coming back.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, like me, you believe in the whole past life.
Yeah,
thing.
totally.
I just saw this amazing video the other day, and who knows, you know, nobody will ever really know, but it's this young man who is he's not quite a teen yet, so preteen.
Yeah.
Since he was little, he's been telling his